Captain Lee Minho walked through the crowded halls of Station Helios with his supply manifest in hand. The station orbited a gas giant at the edge of Terran space, serving as a trading hub for dozens of alien species. Minho had been running cargo for 5 years now, and he knew these routes better than anyone. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, was modest but reliable. His crew was small. Kim Yuna handled navigation with steady hands and sharp eyes. Park Ji-soo kept the engines running no matter how bad things got. Choi Dae-hyun managed security, though they rarely needed it on peaceful trade runs. Today should have been simple. Load supplies, refuel, and head back to the colonies. Nothing special. Nothing dangerous. Minho stepped into the trading sector where merchants from across the galaxy sold their goods. The air smelled like a mixture of exotic spices and recycled oxygen. Aliens of every shape and size filled the space, bargaining and haggling in a dozen different languages. That was when he saw her. She stood near a vendor selling rare minerals, and she was impossible to miss. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin the color of pale violet flowers. Her body was humanoid but wrong in subtle ways. Her fingers were too long. Her movements were too smooth, and her eyes were completely black, like pools of ink without any white or color. When she noticed him looking, she smiled. Her teeth were perfectly white except for the 2 elongated canines that marked her as something dangerous. Minho looked away quickly and tried to focus on his business. He had seen plenty of strange aliens before. This was no different. But he felt her watching him. An hour later, while Minho inspected a shipment of power cells, she approached him. Up close, she was even more striking. Her features were beautiful in an alien way, sharp and elegant. She moved without making sound. "You are human," she said. Her voice was smooth like honey but carried an edge like broken glass. "That's right," Minho replied, keeping his tone professional. "Can I help you with something?" "My name is Valira. I am of the Nocturne Collective." She tilted her head, studying him with those unsettling black eyes. "I have traveled far to meet your kind." Minho had heard of the Nocturne. They were a recent addition to the galactic community. The report said they were peaceful but unusual. They fed on blood like the vampires from old Terran legends. "Welcome to Terran space," Minho said carefully. "I hope you find what you're looking for." "I already have," Valira said, stepping closer. "Your blood smells extraordinary." Minho felt his pulse quicken. "I'm not interested in being a donor, if that's what you're asking." "I am not asking yet," Valira replied with another smile. "I am simply observing. Your species is fascinating. So fragile, yet you have spread across the stars. So short-lived, yet you burn so brightly." She reached out as if to touch his face, but Minho stepped back. "I need to get back to my ship," he said firmly. Valira lowered her hand, but her smile never faded. "Of course, Captain Lee Minho. Perhaps we will meet again." Minho felt cold run down his spine. He had never told her his name. He left the trading sector quickly and returned to his ship. As he walked up the boarding ramp, he noticed a small cut on his hand from moving cargo earlier. A few drops of blood had fallen on the metal deck plates. He thought nothing of it at the time. Back on the Horizon's Edge, Yuna greeted him with the flight plan for their next destination. Jisoo was in the engine room making adjustments. Dae-hyun was checking their weapon systems, though they rarely needed them. "Everything okay, Captain?" Yuna asked, noticing his expression. "Fine," Minho lied. "Just ran into a strange alien. Nothing to worry about." But that night, as they traveled through hyperspace toward the colonies, Minho could not stop thinking about Valira. Those black eyes. That predatory smile. The way she had known his name without being told. He told himself he was being paranoid. Station Helios had security systems. She probably just scanned his ID when he entered the trading sector. That was all. Still, he checked the ship's sensors before going to sleep. No other vessels nearby. They were alone in the vast darkness between stars. 2 weeks passed. Minho and his crew completed their delivery to the colonies and picked up new cargo for another run. Everything was normal, routine, safe. Then they stopped at Merchant Station Kappa for refueling. Minho saw the black ship docked 3 bays away from his own. It was sleek and elegant, with strange curves that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He had never seen that design before. In the station's cantina, he saw her again. Valira sat alone at a corner table, drinking something dark red from a glass. When she saw him, she raised the glass in greeting. Minho's blood went cold. This could not be coincidence. He turned and left immediately, gathering his crew. We're leaving, now. But we haven't finished refueling, Jisoo protested. We'll refuel at the next station. I want to leave immediately. Daehyun caught the urgency in his voice. What's wrong, Captain? Just trust me. We need to go. They departed Merchant Station Kappa within the hour. As they pulled away, Minho watched the sensors. The black ship remained docked. He breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe he was being paranoid after all. But 3 days later, at their next stop, he saw the black ship again. And the one after that. And the one after that. She was following him. Yuna confirmed it with the ship's long-range sensors. Captain, that vessel has been maintaining a parallel course with us for the past week. It stays just outside our detection range, but I've been tracking anomalies in the background radiation. Someone is definitely following us. Can we outrun them? Minho asked. Jisoo shook her head. That ship is faster than ours. If they wanted to catch us, they already would have. So why don't they? Daehyun wondered aloud. That was when the first message arrived. It appeared on Minho's personal console, sent through encrypted channels that should have been impossible for outsiders to access. The message was simple. Captain Lee Minho, I have traveled far to find you again. Your blood calls to me across the stars. Minho stared at the words, feeling fear settle deep in his chest. Valera was not just following him. She was hunting him, and he had no idea how to make her stop. The messages kept coming. Every day, sometimes twice a day, Valera would send another transmission to Minho's personal console. Each one was more unsettling than the last. Do not fear me, human. I wish only to taste what makes your kind so special. I have tried to forget you, but your scent lingers in my memory like a beautiful song. You cannot run forever. I am patient, and I am persistent. Minho stopped reading them after the first week, but they kept arriving, stacking up in his message queue like love letters from a nightmare. Yuna plotted a course that would take them through more populated systems, hoping that witnesses might deter Valera from making direct contact. It did not work. The black ship followed them through busy trade lanes and empty frontier space alike, always maintaining the same careful distance. She's patient, Daehyun observed one evening as they reviewed the tracking data. She's not trying to force a confrontation. She's just making sure you know she's there. That's supposed to make me feel better? Minho asked. No, it's supposed to make you understand what we're dealing with. This isn't random aggression. She's fixated on you specifically. We need to figure out why. Minho had been asking himself the same question for weeks. What made him special? He was just a cargo captain. He had no special skills, no rare genetics, no unique qualities that would make him stand out among billions of humans, unless it was something in his blood itself. He started researching the Nocturne Collective in the ship's database. The information was limited since they had only recently made contact with Terran space, but what he found was disturbing. The Nocturne were obligate hemovores. They required blood to survive, processing it through specialized organs that extracted bioelectric energy from the hemoglobin. Without regular feeding, they would grow weak and eventually enter a death-like stasis that could last for centuries. For most of their history, they had fed on livestock and willing donors from other species. But recent reports indicated something new. Human blood affected them differently than other species. It was more potent, more satisfying, almost addictive in its effects. Some humans had volunteered as donors, drawn by the generous compensation and the promise of an euphoric experience during the feeding process. The Terran government had established strict regulations around the practice, but it was legal as long as both parties consented. Minho had never consented. He had made that clear to Valera at their first meeting. Yet she continued to pursue him. Park Jisoo knocked on his cabin door late one night. When he let her in, she looked worried. "Captain, I need to show you something," she said, pulling up a holographic display from her data pad. "I've been calculating our fuel consumption. If we keep running these extended routes to avoid populated stations where she might approach you, we're going to run out of fuel before we can make it back to Terra." Minho studied the numbers. She was right. They had been burning through their reserves trying to stay ahead of Valera. "How long do we have?" he asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3 if we reduce life support to minimum levels. "But Captain, there's something else." Jisoo pulled up another chart. "I've been monitoring that black ship's energy signature. It's more advanced than anything in the Terran fleet. If she wanted to disable us and take what she wants by force, she could have done it a dozen times by now. So why hasn't she?" I don't know. Maybe she wants your consent. Maybe she's following some kind of code. Or maybe she's just enjoying the chase. The thought made Minho feel sick. He had become prey to a predator who was playing with her food. 3 days later, they received a message from Terran Command. It was brief and formal, requesting that Captain Lee Minho report to headquarters on Terra for debriefing regarding his encounters with Nocturne citizen Valera. Someone had reported the situation to the authorities. Daehyun admitted it had been him. Captain, this has gone on long enough. You need official protection. The Nocturne Collective has diplomatic relations with the Terran Union now. If one of their citizens is stalking you, that's a matter for the government to handle. Minho wanted to be angry, but he could not blame Daehyun for being concerned. This situation had spiraled beyond anything a cargo captain should have to deal with alone. They set course for Terra, the human homeworld. It would take 2 weeks to reach it, even at maximum speed. Minho hoped Valera would not make her move before they arrived. But hope was a fragile thing in the darkness of space. On the 5th day of their journey, their sensors detected an emergency beacon. It was coming from a small passenger vessel that appeared to be drifting without power. Could be a trap, Daehyun warned. Could be people who need help, Yuna countered. Minho made the decision. They were not pirates or cowards. If someone needed rescue, they would provide it. That was the human way. They approached the drifting vessel carefully, weapons charged and shields up. When they got close enough to scan it, Jisoo frowned. Captain, that ship's power core has been surgically disabled. Someone cut the main conduits with precision tools. This wasn't a mechanical failure. Pirates? No distress signs of boarding. No damage to the hull. It's like someone just turned off the lights and left. Minho felt cold realization wash over him. It's bait. She's trying to slow us down. As if responding to his words, a new message appeared on his console. This one was not text. It was a voice recording. Valera's smooth voice filled the bridge. Captain Lee Minho, I grow weary of this chase. The ship I disabled contains 17 passengers. They have enough life support for 3 days. You can rescue them, but it will delay your arrival at Terra. Or you can leave them and maintain your schedule. Choose wisely. The recording ended. Yuna looked at Minho with wide eyes. Captain, what do we do? Minho clenched his fists. Valera had put him in an impossible position. If he rescued the passengers, he would lose precious time and fuel. If he left them, 17 people would die. But there was no choice. Not really. Humans did not abandon others to save themselves. That was what made them different from predators. We rescue them, Minho said quietly. All of them. And then we find a way to end this. It took 12 hours to evacuate all 17 passengers and get them safely aboard the Horizon's Edge. They were scared and confused, not understanding why their ship had been disabled. Minho did not tell them the truth. There was no point in spreading panic. As they resumed course for Terra, now overloaded with passengers and burning fuel faster than ever, Minho watched the sensors for any sign of the black ship. It was there, as always, keeping its distance, watching, waiting. But now Minho was angry. Valera had crossed a line. She had endangered innocent people to manipulate him. Whatever sympathy he might have had for her situation evaporated. When they finally confronted each other, it would not be on her terms. Minho would make sure of that. He just needed to reach Terra first. The black ship followed behind them like a shadow that would not fade, and Minho knew that this chase was far from over. The Horizon's Edge limped toward Terra with its overloaded passenger compartments and dwindling fuel reserves. Minho spent his nights reading everything he could find about the Nocturne Collective, trying to understand the creature that hunted him. The Nocturne homeworld had orbited a dying star at the edge of known space. Their planet received almost no light, existing in perpetual darkness. They had evolved as apex predators in that cold environment, hunting creatures that lived in the deep caverns beneath the surface. Their biology was fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. The Nocturne possessed enhanced strength, speed far beyond human capability, and senses adapted for hunting in complete darkness. They could hear a heartbeat from across a room. They could smell blood through sealed containers. They could move in absolute silence. But their most distinctive feature was their need for blood. The Nocturne digestive system could not process normal food. Instead, they had specialized organs that extracted bioelectric energy from hemoglobin, the protein that carried oxygen in blood. This energy sustained their enhanced metabolism and powered their extraordinary abilities. For thousands of years, they had fed on animals native to their world. When they achieved space travel and encountered other intelligent species, they adapted. They learned to take only what they needed from willing donors. They developed synthetic alternatives. They built a society based on restraint and control, but then they discovered humans. The reports Minho found were clinical and detached, written by Terran scientists studying the interaction between human biology and nocturne physiology. The conclusions were disturbing. Human blood was different from any other species the nocturne had encountered. Something in its composition, a combination of specific proteins, iron content, and bioelectric patterns, created an intense reaction in nocturne neural chemistry. It did not just feed them. It enhanced them beyond their normal capabilities. It made them stronger, faster, sharper, and it was addictive. The reports included case studies of nocturne who had fed on human blood. Many described the experience as transcendent, unlike anything they had felt before. Some became obsessed with finding more. A few had to undergo treatment programs to overcome their dependency. The Terran government had established strict regulations. Human blood could only be donated willingly, with extensive documentation and medical oversight. The Nocturne Collective had agreed to these terms as part of their diplomatic relations with humanity. But Valera was not following those rules. She had fixated on Minho specifically, ignoring thousands of willing human donors. There had to be a reason. Minho found it buried in a research paper published by the Terran Medical Institute. The paper discussed compatibility factors between humans and Nocturne. According to the research, not all human blood affected the Nocturne equally. There were genetic variations, subtle differences in blood chemistry that made some humans more compatible than others. In rare cases, less than 1% of the population, a human's blood could create a perfect resonance with a specific Nocturne's biology. The paper called it a symbiotic match. When a Nocturne encountered their match, the effect was overwhelming. The human's blood would not just satisfy them, it would complete them in a way that was difficult to describe scientifically. Minho stared at the research paper for a long time. Valera had tasted his blood, those few drops on the station deck. And somehow, impossibly, he was her perfect match. He finally understood why she would not stop. This was not simple hunger or predatory instinct. This was something deeper, more fundamental. She had found something she did not even know she was searching for, and now she could not let it go. But understanding did not equal consent. Minho was not obligated to give Valera what she wanted just because her biology demanded it. Yuna found him in his cabin that night, surrounded by research files and medical reports. "You've been reading for 12 hours straight, Captain," she said gently. "You need to rest." "I need to understand her," Minho replied. "If I'm going to stop her, I need to know what I'm dealing with." "And what are you dealing with?" Minho gestured at the reports. "An addict. A predator. A creature driven by instincts she probably doesn't fully understand herself." "She's also a person," Yuna said quietly. "The reports say the Nocturne are intelligent, emotionally complex beings. She's not just some mindless monster." "That almost makes it worse," Minho said. "A monster I could hate, but a person who's suffering, who's driven by biology to do something terrible, that's harder to fight." Yuna sat down across from him. "What are you going to do when we reach Terra?" "I'm going to request official protection. I'm going to file a formal complaint with the Nocturne Embassy. And I'm going to make it clear that I will never consent to being her donor, no matter what her biology tells her she needs." "And if that doesn't stop her?" Minho did not have an answer for that. 2 days before they reached Terra, another message arrived. This one was different from the others. Valera's voice was quieter, almost vulnerable. "Captain Lee Minho, I know you are afraid of me. I know you are researching my people, trying to find a weakness you can exploit. Let me save you the trouble. I have no defense against what I feel. Your blood has awakened something in me that has been dormant for 200 years. 200 years. Minho tried to process that number. Valera was older than any living human. The message continued. "I am not a young member of my species. I have lived through the death of my homeworld, the scattering of my people across the galaxy, the loss of everything I once knew. I have survived by forgetting how to feel. I have fed when necessary and existed in the spaces between genuine emotion." There was a long pause in the recording, and when Valera spoke again, her voice was raw with something that might have been pain. "Then I tasted your blood, and I remembered what it felt like to be alive. Do you understand what that means? For the first time in centuries, I felt something real, something that mattered, and now you ask me to let that go, to return to the empty existence I had before. I am not certain I have the strength to do that. The message ended. Mino sat in silence, feeling something shift inside him. He was still afraid. He was still angry about being hunted. But now he also felt something else. Pity, maybe, or a dark understanding of what it meant to be alone for so long that you forgot how to connect with others. Daehyun knocked on his door. Captain, we're 12 hours from Terra. There's something you should know. I've been monitoring communications from the Nocturne Embassy. They've issued a recall order for Valira. They want her to return immediately for evaluation. Did they say why? No, but I get the impression they're worried about her behavior. Whatever she's doing, it's not normal even by Nocturne standards. Minho nodded slowly. The situation was escalating. Soon they would reach Terra, and this would become an official diplomatic incident. Valira would face consequences from her own people, but somehow Minho doubted that would stop her. She had already chosen him over everything else. What were diplomatic consequences compared to what she thought she needed to survive? The black ship continued to follow them through the darkness, and Minho wondered if this chase would ever truly end. 6 hours from Terra, Minho made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of continuing to the homeworld where authorities and diplomats would take over, he changed course. "Captain, what are you doing?" Yuna asked as she watched the navigation computer recalculate their route. "I'm going to meet her," Minho said. "Face to face. On my terms, not hers." "That's insane," Daehyun protested. "She's been hunting you for weeks. You have no idea what she'll do if you give her the chance." "I have every idea," Minho replied calmly. "She'll try to convince me to donate blood willingly, but she won't force me. If she wanted to take it by force, she would have done it already." "You can't know that for certain." "No, but I can read the pattern of her behavior. She's been patient. She's been persistent. She's been trying to make me understand her position." "Those aren't the actions of someone planning to attack. Those are the actions of someone desperate to be heard." Jisoo looked worried. "Where are you planning to meet her?" Minho pulled up a star chart. "There's an abandoned research station in neutral space about 3 hours from our current position. It's called Dead Space Station. The Terran Science Corps used it for deep space studies 20 years ago, then abandoned it when funding ran out. No jurisdiction, no witnesses, no way for this to turn into a diplomatic incident. And no backup if things go wrong," Daehyun added. "That's why you'll be there with me," Minho said. "Hidden, watching with weapons ready. If she makes any aggressive move, you have permission to defend me with lethal force." Daehyun nodded slowly. "And if she doesn't? Then we talk. We figure this out like civilized beings." Minho sent a message to Valira on an open channel. It was simple and direct. "Dead Space Station, Sector 7, 3 hours. Come alone and I'll hear what you have to say." They reached the abandoned station in silence. Dead Space Station was aptly named. It drifted in the void between star systems, its hull scarred by micrometeor impacts and radiation. The emergency light still functioned, powered by backup generators, but everything else was dark and cold. Minho, Daehyun, and Yuna boarded the station in environmental suits. The air was breathable but stale, untouched by living beings for 2 decades. "The main conference room is on level 3, Yuna said, checking her datapad. "It has the best structural integrity and only 2 entry points. Easy to secure." They set up quickly. Daehyun positioned himself in the shadows with a plasma rifle, where he could watch the entire room without being seen immediately. Yuna remained on the horizon's edge, monitoring sensors and ready to provide extraction if necessary. Minho sat at the conference table and waited. Exactly 3 hours after he sent the message, the station's external sensors detected an approaching vessel. The black ship docked smoothly, and moments later Valira entered the conference room. She was alone, as promised. In the dim emergency lighting, her violet skin seemed to glow with an inner luminescence. She wore simple clothes, something flowing that resembled a black dress. Her movements were graceful and silent as she crossed the room. "You stopped running," she said, her black eyes fixed on Minho. "I wondered if you would." "I want answers," Minho replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Why me? There are millions of humans. Thousands have volunteered to be donors for your people. Why are you hunting me specifically?" Valira moved closer, but not threateningly. She seemed almost hesitant. Because I tasted your blood. When? I never agreed to that. On Station Helios. You were injured, a small cut on your hand from a loading crate. 3 drops fell on the deck. I found them before the cleaning drones processed them. She stopped a few feet from the table, her expression difficult to read. Those 3 drops changed everything. Changed what? Changed me. Changed how I experience existence. Valera's voice was quiet but intense. For 200 years I have fed from donors, from livestock, from synthetic alternatives. It sustained my body but not my spirit. I have been hollow inside, going through the motions of living without truly experiencing life. She clasped her hands together, almost like she was praying. Then I tasted your blood, Lee Min-ho, and for the first time in centuries I felt complete. I felt alive. I felt like there was a reason to exist beyond simple survival. That doesn't give you the right to stalk me across the galaxy, Min-ho said, though his voice was gentler than before. No, Valera agreed. It does not. But it makes it inevitable. I have tried to resist. I have fed from other donors. I have used every technique my people developed to suppress the hunger. Nothing works. Nothing compares. I dream of your blood. I wake up thinking about it. It haunts every moment of my existence. For the first time, Min-ho saw something other than predatory hunger in her eyes. He saw desperation. He saw pain. He saw loneliness that stretched across centuries. What you're describing sounds like addiction, he said carefully. Perhaps it is. Your scientists theorize that human blood contains compounds that trigger euphoric responses in my species' neural chemistry. But this feels like more than chemistry. It feels like recognition. Like my body has found something it was always meant to find. I don't believe in destiny. Neither did I until I found you. They sat in silence for a moment. Min-ho could feel Daehyun watching from the shadows, ready to act if necessary. But Valera made no aggressive moves. She just stood there, vulnerable in a way that seemed impossible for a creature so dangerous. I cannot give you what you want, Min-ho finally said. I will not consent to being your donor. Not now, not ever. You need to accept that and move on. Valera's expression hardened, but not with anger, with something closer to grief. I understand, and I know I should respect your choice. But I do not know how to let this go. It is not just hunger, it is need. It is the difference between existing and living. Then we are at an impasse, Min-ho said. Before Valera could respond, alarms screamed throughout the station. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridors outside. Yuna's voice crackled through Min-ho's communicator. Captain, we have a problem. Multiple ships just dropped out of hyperspace. Raiders. They're moving toward the station fast. Valera's head snapped toward the entrance, every muscle in her body tensing. Kravaxian pirates. They must have been tracking one of us. The Kravaxians were notorious. They were a species of scavengers and thieves who preyed on isolated ships and stations. They were brutal, efficient, and had no respect for galactic law. Min-ho stood up. Can we escape? Not both ships, Yuna replied. They're moving to surround the station. Daehyun emerged from the shadows, rifle ready. We need to defend this position. Valera looked at Min-ho and something passed between them. An understanding. They could be enemies later. Right now they needed to survive. Can you fight? Min-ho asked. A dangerous smile crossed Valera's face, and for the first time, Min-ho saw the true predator beneath her civilized exterior. Captain, my people have been apex predators for 10,000 years. Watch and learn what that means. The first Kravaxian boarding party breached the station's hull 3 levels below them. There were 12 raiders, armed with crude but effective weapons. They never stood a chance. Valera moved through them like death itself, faster than the eye could follow. She was a blur of violet skin and flashing claws, tearing through the raiders with brutal efficiency. She did not kill them all, Min-ho noticed. She disabled most of them, breaking limbs and removing weapons with surgical precision. But 3 who tried to shoot her died quickly. Min-ho and Daehyun provided covering fire when needed, but mostly they just watched in awe as Valera demonstrated why her species was feared. When the last raider fell, Valera stood among the carnage, breathing heavily. Her clothes were torn and she had a deep gash across her torso that leaked dark fluid, but she was victorious. You're injured, Min-ho said. I need blood, Valera replied, her voice weak. My regeneration requires bioelectric energy. Min-ho looked at Valera, then at Daehyun. then back at the injured alien woman who had just saved their lives. She was leaning against the wall now, her breathing shallow, the wound in her torso still leaking dark fluid that might have been blood. "How bad is it?" he asked. "I can survive," Valira said, though her voice was weaker than before. "But without blood, my regeneration is slow. It will take days, perhaps weeks to fully heal. If we encounter more raiders, I will not be able to fight." Daehyun kept his weapon ready, but his voice was uncertain. "Captain, what are you thinking?" Minho was thinking about a lot of things. He was thinking about how Valira had fought to protect them without hesitation. He was thinking about the raiders she had disabled rather than killed, showing restraint even in combat. He was thinking about her desperation and her loneliness and her centuries of emptiness. Most of all, he was thinking about what it meant to be human. Humans survived not through superior strength or speed, but through cooperation, through helping those who helped them, through recognizing when mercy was stronger than vengeance. "One time," Minho said firmly. "And then we establish clear boundaries. We figure out how to handle this situation properly." Valira's black eyes widened. "You would do this? After everything I have done?" "You saved our lives," Minho replied, "and you're injured because of it. I'm not going to let you suffer when I can help." He held up a hand before she could respond. "But this doesn't change anything long term. This is a medical necessity, not consent for you to continue hunting me." "Understood?" "Understood," Valira said quietly. She had equipment on her ship, she explained. A specialized device that could extract blood safely and cleanly without risk of infection or excessive loss. It would take only what she needed for regeneration. They moved to her ship, the sleek black vessel that had followed them for so long. Inside, it was elegant and dark, lit by soft blue lights that reminded Minho of bioluminescent deep-sea creatures on Terra. Valira prepared the extraction device with practiced efficiency. It looked like a medical tool, all smooth surfaces and gentle curves, nothing threatening about it. "This will feel strange," she warned. "Not painful, but intense. The device stimulates your cardiovascular system to make the extraction faster and safer." Minho sat down and rolled up his sleeve. His heart was pounding, but he kept his expression calm. Daehyun stood nearby, weapon lowered but ready. When Valira activated the device, Minho understood what she meant by intense. It was not pain, exactly. It was more like every nerve in his arm suddenly became hyper-aware. He could feel his blood moving, could feel the device drawing it out in careful, measured amounts, and he could see what it did to Valira. Her eyes closed and her whole body seemed to relax. The wound in her torso began to close visibly, the torn tissue knitting itself back together with remarkable speed. Color returned to her pale violet skin. Her breathing steadied and deepened. She looked peaceful, almost happy. The extraction took less than 10 minutes. When it was done, Valira opened her eyes and looked at Minho with an expression he could not quite read. "Thank you," she said softly. "You have no idea what this means." "I have some idea," Minho replied, pulling his sleeve back down. "Now can we talk like reasonable people?" They talked for hours, not just about the blood or the hunting, but about everything. Valira told him about her homeworld, a place of eternal darkness where her people had built cities in vast underground caverns. She told him about the day their sun began to die, expanding into a red giant that would eventually consume their planet. She told him about the Exodus, the scattering of her people across the galaxy in search of new homes. "We were explorers once," she said, "philosophers and artists and scientists. Then we became refugees, wanderers. Many of my people lost themselves in the transition. They forgot who they were beyond their basic needs." "And you?" Minho asked. "I became a collector. I traveled from world to world, gathering art and knowledge from dying civilizations. I told myself it gave my existence meaning. But it was just a distraction from the emptiness inside." Minho told her about Terra, about humanity's own struggles to reach the stars despite their limitations. He told her about the wars they had fought, the mistakes they had made, and the lessons they had learned about cooperation and compassion. "We survive by forming bonds," he said, "by building communities, not by hunting each other." "Perhaps that is what I need to learn," Valera admitted. As they talked, Minho began to understand her better. She was not a monster. She was not even really a predator, despite her biology. She was just someone who had been alone for so long that she had forgotten how to connect with others in healthy ways. The encounter with his blood had awakened something in her, but it had also broken something. It had given her hope and desire after centuries of numbness, but she did not know how to handle those feelings appropriately. "You need help," Minho said gently. "Professional help. My people have specialists who work with addiction and obsessive behavior, and the Nocturne Embassy probably has resources too." "I know," Valera said. "When the recall order came, I ignored it because I was afraid. Afraid that if I returned to my people, they would make me forget what I had felt, make me return to the emptiness. That's not how treatment works, not if it's done right. The goal is not to make you empty again, it's to help you find healthy ways to feel complete." Valera was quiet for a long moment. "You are wise for someone so young. I'm 32. I am 218. To me, you are very young." She smiled slightly. "But perhaps youth has its own wisdom. Perhaps I have been alive so long that I have forgotten simple truths." Before they could continue, Yuna's voice came through the communicator. "Captain, we have another problem. More ships are approaching. But these aren't raiders. They're Terran Union patrol vessels. Someone must have detected the pirate activity and sent a response team." Minho and Valera looked at each other. The authorities were coming. Soon there would be questions, reports, diplomatic complications. "What will you do?" Valera asked. "I'm going to tell them the truth. That you helped us fight off raiders. That we're working on resolving this situation peacefully, and I'm going to recommend that you accept the recall order and get the help you need. And if I do, if I seek treatment and learn to manage these feelings, what then?" Minho stood up. "Then maybe someday when you're in a better place mentally, we can talk about establishing a proper donor relationship, with boundaries, with consent, with everything done the right way. But only if you do the work to get healthy first." Valera stood as well, towering over him. "You would consider that? After everything?" "I would consider it. But you have to prove you can respect my choices, that you can be patient, that you can interact with me as a person, not as a source of sustenance." "I understand." Valera extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. "I will return to my people. I will seek treatment. And I will earn your trust properly." Minho shook her hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, and her grip was carefully gentle, as if she was afraid of breaking him. The Terran patrol ships arrived, and Minho gave his statement to the commanding officer. Yes, they had been followed by a Nocturne citizen. Yes, they had encountered raiders. No, the Nocturne had helped defend them, not attacked them. The officer looked skeptical, but accepted the report. Valera would be escorted back to the Nocturne Embassy for debriefing. As she prepared to leave, Valera turned back to Minho one last time. "Thank you for giving me hope. Real hope, not the desperate obsession I felt before. Thank you for showing me a path forward." "Just follow it," Minho replied. "Do the work, and maybe we'll talk again someday." The black ship departed with its Terran escort, and Minho watched it go with mixed feelings. Relief, mostly, but also something else. A strange hope that maybe, in this vast galaxy full of different species and cultures, understanding was possible, even between a human and a vampire from the stars. The Horizon's Edge continued its journey to Terra with 17 extra passengers, a damaged reputation with Terran command, and a captain who could not stop thinking about the alien woman who had hunted him across the stars. Minho sat in his cabin reviewing reports when Yuna knocked on his door. She entered with 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from him. "You did a good thing back there," she said. "Helping her, did I?" Minho asked. Or did I just enable someone who couldn't accept no for an answer? You showed her compassion while maintaining your boundaries. That's not enabling. That's being human. Minho sipped his coffee, grateful for its warmth. I keep wondering if she'll actually follow through. If she'll really get help or if this was just another manipulation to get what she wanted. I guess we'll find out, Yuna said. But Captain, I've been thinking. What she described, that feeling of being empty for centuries, then suddenly feeling alive, that's not just addiction. That's loneliness. That's what happens when someone is isolated for too long. The Nocturne are a dying species, Minho said quietly. Their homeworld is gone. They're scattered across the galaxy. Maybe Valira isn't unique. Maybe there are others like her, desperate for connection but not knowing how to form it properly. That's pretty heavy stuff to think about. Welcome to first contact situations. They're never as simple as the stories make them seem. 3 days from Terra, Minho received a message from the Nocturne Embassy. It was not from Valira but from an official named Counselor Thane. The message was formal but not unfriendly. Captain Lee Minho, we appreciate your discretion in handling the situation with Citizen Valira. She has been remanded to our care and will undergo comprehensive treatment for behavioral imbalance. We regret any distress her actions caused you and wish to assure you that this behavior is not representative of our people. The message continued with diplomatic language about maintaining good relations between their species, but one line stood out to Minho. Valira has requested permission to send you periodic updates on her recovery progress with no expectation of response. We leave this decision entirely to your discretion. Minho stared at that line for a long time. Part of him wanted to refuse, to cut all contact and move on with his life. But another part, the part that had felt pity for her loneliness, thought that maybe allowing those updates would help her recovery. He sent back a brief reply. Updates are acceptable, provided they remain appropriate and respect previously established boundaries. 2 days later, the first update arrived. It was short and carefully worded. Captain Lee Minho, I have begun treatment with a specialist in cross-species behavioral psychology. The work is difficult. I am confronting patterns of thinking I have held for centuries. But I am committed to this process. Thank you for the opportunity to try, Valira. Minho did not respond, but he kept the message. When the horizon's edge finally reached Terra, the sight of humanity's homeworld filled the main view screen. The planet was beautiful, covered in blue oceans and green continents wrapped in swirling white clouds. Minho had been born on a colony world, but Terra was where humanity began. It was special. The 17 rescued passengers were transferred to a passenger liner that would take them to their original destination. They thanked Minho and his crew repeatedly, unaware of the strange circumstances that had delayed their rescue. Terran Command debriefed Minho extensively. They wanted to know everything about his encounters with Valira, about the raiders, about the meeting at Dead Space Station. He told them the truth, leaving nothing out. The commanding officer, Admiral Park Sun-woo, listened carefully and then leaned back in her chair. You handled a difficult situation well, Captain. Most people would have either run until they were caught or responded with violence. You chose dialogue and boundaries. That's very human of you. I'm not sure it was the smart choice, Minho admitted. Smart and right are not always the same thing, the Admiral replied. The Nocturne Embassy has cleared you of any wrongdoing. They've actually praised your handling of the situation. You've become something of a minor hero in diplomatic circles. Minho groaned. That's the last thing I wanted. Too bad. Fame is part of the job sometimes. The Admiral smiled slightly. Take a month of leave, Captain. You've earned it. We'll have new assignments ready when you return. Minho spent the first week of his leave in his family's home in the countryside, far from cities and spaceports. His parents were retired farmers who had never left Terra's surface. They were thrilled to see him, but worried about the news reports they had seen. An alien vampire chased you across space? His mother asked over dinner. Why didn't you call for help sooner? I was handling it, Mom. You almost got killed by pirates. But I didn't, and I made a new friend. Sort of. His father shook his head. The galaxy is a strange place. In my day, we stayed on our own planet and were happy with it. In your day, Dad, we had just invented faster-than-light travel. Things change. But it was nice to be home, to sleep in gravity that felt right, to eat fresh vegetables from his parents' garden. It reminded Minho why humans had worked so hard to reach the stars. Not to escape Terra, but to carry its beauty and values with them to new worlds. On his second week of leave, another message arrived from Valira. Captain Lee Minho, my treatment continues. I have learned that my obsession with you was not truly about your blood, but about what it represented. Connection, purpose, an end to loneliness. I am working to find these things in healthier ways. I have joined a support group for Nocturne who struggle with human blood dependency. I have started creating art again, something I abandoned centuries ago. Small steps, but they feel significant. Thank you for showing me that change is possible. Valira. Minho found himself smiling as he read it. Maybe she really was doing the work. He spent the third week visiting Jisoo, Yuna, and Daehyun. They had all taken leave in different parts of Terra, but they met up in the capital city for a reunion dinner. So, Captain, Daehyun said over drinks, are you ever going to tell us what you're planning to do about Valira long-term? What do you mean? I mean, you left the door open for her. You said maybe someday you'd consider a donor relationship. Were you serious? Minho thought about it. I don't know. Maybe. If she really does the work, if she really becomes healthy, if she can prove she sees me as a person and not just a resource, then maybe I'd consider it. But that's a lot of ifs. It would be weird, Yuna said. Your girlfriend being a 200-year-old alien vampire. She's not my girlfriend, Minho protested. Not yet, Jisoo said with a grin. They all laughed and Minho let himself enjoy the moment. His friends were alive. He was alive. They had survived something strange and dangerous, and they were stronger for it. On the last day of his leave, Minho stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean where his ancestors had first looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. His communicator buzzed. Another message from Valira. Captain Lee Minho, I have completed the first phase of my treatment. My counselor believes I am ready to begin limited social interactions outside the Nocturne community. I would like to visit Terra, not to see you, but to see the world that created someone capable of such kindness. I want to understand your people better. I want to learn how humans form connections so easily when my people struggle with it. Would you be willing to recommend places I should visit? No pressure to meet in person. Just guidance from someone who understands both my situation and his homeworld. Valira. Minho looked out at the ocean, at the endless blue water that covered most of Terra's surface. He thought about humanity's journey from this small planet to the stars. He thought about all the species they had met, all the misunderstandings and conflicts and eventually friendships. He thought about what it meant to be human. Not perfect, not invincible, but willing to try, willing to extend a hand even to those who seemed like monsters at first. He started typing a response, listing museums and parks and cultural centers that might help Valira understand humanity better. He kept it professional and friendly, maintaining the boundaries they had established. But at the end, he added one more line. If you do visit Terra and if you want to talk, I'll be available. As a friend. Nothing more, nothing less. Take care, Valira. He sent the message and put away his communicator. Tomorrow he would return to his ship and his crew. They would take on new cargo and fly to new worlds. But for tonight, he stood on Terra and watched the sun set, feeling grateful for the strange and wonderful galaxy he called home. 6 months after their confrontation at Dead Space Station, Minho received a message that surprised him. Valira was on Terra and she wanted to meet. Not for blood, not for anything physical, just to talk if he was willing. Minho had been back to running cargo for the past 5 months. Life had returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after being hunted across the galaxy by an alien vampire. He had followed Valira's progress through her periodic updates. She had completed her treatment program. She had found a community of other Nocturne working through similar issues. She had even started teaching art history at a university on a neutral world. Her messages had become less about him and more about her own growth. That felt like progress. He agreed to meet her at the Terran Museum of Natural History in the capital city. It was public, safe, and full of interesting things to discuss if the conversation became awkward. When Minho arrived, he found Valira standing in front of a display about Terra's prehistoric oceans. She wore simple clothes that helped her blend in, though her height and violet skin still drew curious stares from other visitors. Captain Lee Minho, she said when she saw him. Her voice was the same, smooth and slightly alien, but calmer than before. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Just Minho is fine, he replied. We're not on my ship. They walked through the museum together, talking about art and history and the strange paths that had brought them to this moment. Valera was different now, calmer, more present. She listened when Minho spoke instead of just waiting for her turn to talk. My counselor helped me understand something important, Valera said as they stood in front of a display about Terra's early space program. I was not really obsessed with your blood. I was obsessed with what I felt when I tasted it. For the first time in centuries, I felt connected to something beyond my own survival, but I did not know how to process that feeling in a healthy way. And now? Minho asked. Now I understand that connection cannot be taken or demanded. It must be built through mutual respect and genuine interaction. I understand that you are a person with your own needs and boundaries, not a solution to my loneliness. That's good progress. It has been difficult, Valera admitted. Changing patterns of thought I held for 200 years. Learning to see relationships as something more than transactions, but I am better for it. They found a quiet corner in the museum's cafe and sat down with drinks. Valera had something that looked like tea but smelled vaguely metallic. Minho had his usual coffee. I want to apologize, Valera said. Properly apologize without any excuses or justifications. I violated your boundaries. I made you afraid. I endangered innocent people to manipulate you. Those actions were wrong, regardless of my emotional state at the time. I am sorry. Minho had heard apologies before, but this one felt genuine. Valera was not asking for forgiveness or trying to make him feel obligated. She was simply acknowledging harm done. I accept your apology, he said, and I appreciate the work you've done to change. I have also been attending sessions with Dr. Han Ciola, Valera continued. She is a xenobiologist who specializes in human nocturne interactions. She has helped me understand the biological component of what I experienced. Minho knew that name. Dr. Han was famous in her field. What did she tell you? She confirmed what you suspected. We are biologically compatible in a rare way. Your blood chemistry aligns almost perfectly with my physiological needs. It is not destiny as I once thought, but it is unusual. Less than 1% of humans would have such strong compatibility with a specific nocturne. That must have been hard to hear. Actually, it was helpful, Valera said. Understanding the biological component helped me separate my genuine feelings from the chemical reaction. It is like the difference between being hungry and being addicted to a specific food. The hunger is real, but the fixation on that one food is the problem. So you've learned to eat other things, Minho said, using her metaphor. Exactly. I have found human donors who volunteer through proper channels. Their blood does not affect me the same way yours did, but it sustains me, and I have learned to find fulfillment in other aspects of life. Art, teaching, friendship with my own kind and with other species. A young human woman approached their table, holding a data pad nervously. Excuse me, are you Professor Valera? From the university? Valera looked surprised but pleased. I am. How can I help you? I'm studying xenoarchaeology, and I attended your lecture on nocturne cultural artifacts last month. It was amazing. I was wondering if you had time to answer a few questions about your research. Valera glanced at Minho, who nodded. Of course. Please join us. The student sat down and started asking detailed questions about nocturne history and art. Minho watched Valera's face light up as she talked about her work. This was different from the desperate, hungry creature who had chased him across space. This was someone with purpose and passion beyond survival. After the student left, Valera smiled. That was pleasant. I forget sometimes that I have things to offer beyond my biology. You're building a life here, Minho observed. I am trying. Terra is beautiful. Your people are welcoming, though some are still cautious around Nocturne. I understand their hesitation. We are predators, even if we try to be civilized ones. Humans are predators too, Minho said. We just pretend we're not. At least your people are honest about it. They talked for another hour about everything and nothing. Valera told him about her students, about the small apartment she had rented near the university, about learning to cook human food even though she could not eat it just to understand the culture better. Minho told her about his recent cargo runs, about his crew, about the strange aliens he had met in distant systems. It felt natural, like talking to an old friend rather than someone who had once terrified him. As the sun began to set, they walked outside together. The city was beautiful in the golden light, full of humans and aliens going about their lives in harmony. Can I ask you something? Valera said. When I first contacted you about visiting Terra, you said you would be available as a friend. Did you mean that? I did, Minho replied. And I still do. Even knowing our biological compatibility, even knowing that part of me will always be drawn to you in ways I must actively manage. Everyone has things they need to manage, Minho said. I had an uncle who was an alcoholic. He worked hard every day to stay sober. Having the tendency toward addiction didn't make him a bad person. It just meant he had to be more careful than others. Valera was quiet for a moment. That is a generous way to see it. It's a human way to see it. We believe in second chances, in growth, in the possibility that people can change. They reached the transit station where Minho needed to catch a shuttle back to the spaceport. Before he left, Valera held out her hand in the human gesture of farewell. Thank you, Minho, for everything. For showing me kindness when you had every right to show only fear. For giving me a chance to become better. Minho shook her hand. Thank you for doing the work. That's the hard part. Will I see you again? Probably, Minho said with a smile. I come back to Terra every few months. And if you're staying here, teaching, building a life, then yeah, we'll probably see each other again. As friends? As friends. Minho boarded his shuttle and watched through the window as Valera walked back toward the university district. She moved with confidence now. Not the predatory grace of a hunter, but the steady stride of someone who knew where they belonged. Over the following months, Minho and Valera developed an unlikely friendship. They would meet when he was on Terra, sometimes for coffee, sometimes at museums or parks. They talked about philosophy and culture and the challenges of building bridges between different species. Valera introduced him to other nocturne living on Terra. Some were refugees like her, seeking new homes after their homeworld's destruction. Others were diplomats or scholars or artists. They were all trying to find their place in a galaxy that still did not quite understand them. Minho introduced Valera to his crew. Yuna liked her immediately, finding her stories about ancient civilizations fascinating. Jisoo was cautious at first, but warmed up when Valera helped repair a complex alien device they had been struggling with. Even Daehyun, who had been ready to shoot her 6 months earlier, admitted she was good company. One day Valera asked Minho if he would consider becoming a regular donor. Not because she needed his blood specifically, but because it would help her research. Dr. Han was studying the biological compatibility between humans and nocturne, trying to understand why certain matches were so strong. It would be entirely clinical, Valera explained. Monthly donations in a medical setting, with full oversight and documentation. You would be helping advance xenobiological science. Minho thought about it for a week before agreeing, not because he felt obligated, but because it felt right. Valera had proven herself trustworthy. She had done the work to change. And if his participation could help other humans and nocturne build healthier relationships, that seemed worthwhile. The first clinical donation was strange but professional. Dr. Han supervised everything, taking measurements and samples, asking questions about how they both felt during and after the process. Fascinating, Dr. Han said afterward, reviewing her data.